Dear friends, fellow attendees, and esteemed guests of the Pan IIT World of Technology 2021 Summit, welcome to the Drone, UAV, and Space Tech session. Space is the greatest frontier for humanity to explore. With the advent of private space exploration and interplanetary travel, the space race has never been more intense. To take us through this wonderful discussion, we have our moderator, Dr. Sarita Ahlawat, who is the co founder and the managing director of BotLab Dynamics. She is also the head of Living Science Group, a science communication platform that she started with the help of research scholars at ICGEB, New Delhi in 2014. Prior to that, she completed her postdoctoral research at the Wadsworth Center, Albany, New York. She holds a PhD from the University of Illinois and MS from the University of Rochester, New York. Please join me in welcoming the moderator for the session, Dr. Sarita Ahlawat. Over to you.
Hello. Thank you for the very kind introduction. It's a privilege to be a moderator for a panel that is made up of very, very accomplished people who are young, enthusiastic, and taking us into the next generation of technology, and that too in hardware sphere. So let me not waste any moment and introduce you to the panelists for today. And the order that we have decided is we'll go first with Ankit Mehta, and anybody who knows drones knows Ankit. Ankit has made drones very cool. Ankit with IdeaForge has been working on drone technology for quite some time. His drones are already part of Indian Armed Forces, and so we will have more from Ankit very soon. So you cannot talk of drones without discussing anti-drones. And for that, we have Dr. Shiva Ramaswamy of very interesting startup by the name of Big Bang Boom. We will like to know from him why this name. But other than that, anti-drone technology is just the one area that he's focusing on. He's working on several other very interesting technologies, riot management with drones, and 360 view of armored vehicles. So we'll know more from Shiva very soon. And just about the drones, we have another sphere that we need to be discussing today in the space area. So it's very exciting that India too is contributing in the space tech. And for that, we have Srinath. So I think he's online now. Srinath is the CEO and co-founder of AgniCool. That's a startup incubated at IIT Madras. So please join me welcoming three very, very accomplished panelists for today. So I think I'll get started with Ankit. And Ankit, can you just briefly introduce yourself and share a little bit about what IdeaForge is doing now and where it's planning to go ahead in next, let's say, 5 years?
Thanks, Sarita. It's a pleasure to be here on this panel today, now afternoon. IdeaForge, is a business that we started in 2007, and we pretty much started this straight out of IIT Bombay. The three of us, technical co-founders, were building drones since 2004. And since then, we've been essentially very excited about this space. And till 2008, we were largely meandering around with the tech, just happy building drones and not really building it for any application. But in 2008, when the attacks on Mumbai happened, and when the Taj Mahal hotel was burning, we were thinking that maybe this tech could be an interesting replacement for the helicopters who were trying to peep into what was happening at those higher floors, which was not visible from the ground floor. So we felt that we had an opportunity that we in a way missed of doing something meaningful with the tech we were building. And that's how we decided that we will invest our time and energy in building drones for security and surveillance. And for the next few years, we started to not just build, but also deliver these drones for various security and surveillance applications. A quick snippet, or a fun snippet rather, is that it was an early prototype of ours in the movie Three Idiots that sort of opened up the common understanding in our country, particularly about drones. So with that, we started building these systems and delivering them for security and surveillance. Pretty much all the disaster management, counter-terrorism, counter-insurgency, crowd management, traffic management use cases were operationalized in India. Any large event that we have experienced over the last few years, our drones have been a part of helping in mitigating or managing those scenarios. As well as now, over the last few years, we've also started to look at drones for mapping applications. And currently, we are all aware of the large mapping scheme that the government of India has floated, which is the Swamitwa scheme, and our drones are doing duty in helping create property cards for our village population. And they are being operated on a daily basis. And over to you, Sarita, once again.
So, Dr. Shiva, can we get a little introduction and more about your company?
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Sarita. It's wonderful being here on the panel today. We started Big Bang Boom. Big Bang Boom is like a defense solutions company. We started it around 3 years or so ago. I and my co-founder Praveen, we've known each other for the last 15 years. We've already started an edtech research company before this. We exited that in an IPO in 2017 before we started investing our time and energies into Big Bang Boom per se. When we started it off, the idea behind it was that, we actually I come from an R&D background. I've done my PhD in nanotech. I've spent quite a lot of time both in academia and then later in my company doing research. And we felt that, it was high time that the research started getting applied to relevant technology, relevant use cases, right? I mean, just like what Ankit was mentioning earlier, it's fun tinkering in the lab on something that you're passionate about. But then I think the joy that you get when it's being deployed on the field and it actually serves a purpose is something completely different. And then we decided that, when we were mulling over various fields in which, we could invest our time into, defense to us stood out in the sense that we felt that at that time, at least 3-4 years back when we were starting off, there was still India was just opening up to private companies participating in defense, and there was a need for a lot of innovation in a lot of niche areas there. And as you would know, typically any country around the world, whether it is, whether it's the Germany during the World War II, US in the current environment, or UK before that during the colonization era, it's the company that's in the forefront of defense technology that, emerges as a world leader. Right. So we felt that, defense being a very opaque field, very similar to education that we've been in, being very resistant to change would be a very interesting place for us to be in. So we picked up a few projects. In fact, our first product development was not in India at all. We did a project for the South Korean government under what was called the DAPA scheme, the Defense Acquisition and Procurement Agency scheme, to build an autonomous environmental monitoring drone. This was a small drone that you could let's say a soldier could release, and it would find the closest source of drinkable water for him. It was very, very useful in terms of insurgency and counter-terrorist activities, etc. We won a prize and award for that there when we deployed our first series. And when we got that, we were reached out by the Indian Defense Ministry saying that, you guys are based in India. Why don't you start working with us? So that's how it started. I mean, then since then, we've picked up 2 or 3 projects. We've successfully completed the trials and demonstrations as of a month or so ago. Our flagship product is primarily a 360-degree situational awareness upgrade. This is something that's installed on top of armored vehicles, either ICVs, tanks, or any vehicles in which there's a lack of situational awareness. So typically, if you look at a tank today, they will have a series of what are known as periscopes that will give you like a 60-degree field of view. And that's what the driver or the commander uses, both for navigation and for firing, etc. So what we do is we install mil-spec cameras on the chassis of the vehicle, and we provide a seamless 360-degree view for the commander and the gunner inside, so that they get not only do they get a full view, but they also give AI-driven inputs as to, what are the approaching vehicles? Is it a man or a armored vehicle? If it's an armored vehicle, what kind of guns it has, etc. So that the decision-making on the commander side becomes a lot easier. And since it's all tech integrated and it's a completely digital platform, the same system can also be seamlessly viewed from Delhi. So which means that the Prime Minister or the Defense Minister sitting in Delhi would be able to see what the tank in Rajasthan is looking at and be able to take decisions based on that. And that's the kind of technology that we are looking at. And this is what we have finished demonstrating to the Indian Army under MIRC now. The second, and what probably is a lot more spoken about nowadays, is the anti-drone tech. So the anti-drone tech is basically a system that can detect, classify, and neutralize drones, especially with the recent attack on the Jammu Air Base, etc. It's gained a lot of popularity and a lot of prominence to it. It's a system that can identify that there is a drone in the particular area, give you, depending on the make and the model of the drone, it can tell you what drone it is, what frequency it's communicating in, and try and give you predictions on what is the intended target of the drone. And then there are countermeasures. We have a small jammer that can basically cut off the signal between the drone and the controller, or cut off the signal between the drone and the GPS satellite, thereby neutralizing the drone. We can send the drone back to its controller. We can make the drone land in the same spot so that we can capture it. All of that are features that are built into it. That's basically like
aluminum foil में toast पड़ा हुआ है, वो दे देना.
Fantastic. So I think those are the two major things. These are the two things that have finished trials and we've gone ahead with. Apart from that, we work on other projects like exoskeleton for infantry soldiers, etc. So the difference between, let's say, us and many other defense companies is that we look at us being technology agnostic. So we work on RF, we work on AI, we work in computer vision, and we look at ourselves as a solution builder, where the defense forces can come to us with a problem and we'll find a technological solution to it, rather than saying, you know what, this is the one technology that I've built and I'll go for it. I think that's short. We are very young. We are like less than 3 years old now. We're trying to do what we can in the defense space.
Very, very, very interesting body of work that you've built. And hats off to you. I mean, working in defense is, I guess, is the hardest area to get going with it. So I think I'll come back to you, Shiva, with more questions. And now we'll move on to the next panelist, Srinath. And Srinath, can we just get a little introduction about your background and what your company Agnikul is all about?
Hi, yeah, sure. So, hey everyone, hi, my name is Srinath. I'm one of the co-founders of this company called Agnikul, where we are building, rockets that launch small satellites to space on demand. By background, I'm a physics enthusiast, I should say, before anything else. And grew up, understanding physics and learning as much as I can. Then did a master's degree in financial engineering after a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. This was mainly because I was just fascinated towards finance, and I realized that I didn't know anything about it, and people around me were doing it. All that said, I went to the US and was able to do a master's degree in finance, but I realized I'm an engineer at heart. So took a second leap of faith, did a master's degree again in aerospace engineering. And after that, moved to Los Angeles because I wanted to be around SpaceX. I've been a SpaceX fanboy for a while now. After that, learned that there is a lot of respect for Indian space tech abroad, particularly in the US. And that is when I realized probably I should be doing something in India, in an area that I really love. Reached out to a bunch of IT professors, and one person for some reason was interested to listen to me, and that was Professor Chakravarti from IIT Madras. Once that happened, I quit my job there, came back to Chennai, and me along with my other co-founder Moin, who has been a long-term friend of mine, he came together and we started Agnikul. So the core thing that we do is build rockets that can, very quickly be launched to space and on demand. So we're trying to make the entire experience of, launching a rocket similar to, like, say, buying a laptop, right? So let's say, for example, one person wants a kind of has this satellite to put in space, and another person has a slightly larger or a same satellite but in different orbit. These people don't need to try to fit into one rocket. Just like if all of us on this panel want to buy laptops, some might prefer larger monitors, some others might prefer larger memory, larger hard disk, same way. So we are building rockets that can be customized and can be tailored to address a particular customer. So that's what we have been doing. Been around since 2017 December formally. I mean, the idea started in 2015, but formally we started working on this in 2017 December. That's basically the story of Agnikul as well.
So I think, all three panelists are building hardware-based technology and, this falls into this domain. And I think my first question, which is always my favorite to ask, how easy or difficult it is to build in hardware, because India is actually not known for hardware technology, especially in electronics. So I would start with Ankit, and Ankit, you've been longest in this journey. Would you say it's fun all the time, or it's difficult sometimes?
So, there's something I tell pretty often that, I'm living a dream, and often it's also a nightmare. So essentially, what happens in hardware space, particularly in India, and especially around the time when we started, there was no ecosystem at all. In fact, when we were doing our projects as students also, we had to literally hunt for places where you could get your hardware work done. And then slowly and slowly, we built an ecosystem around us where at least we were in a position that we could convert anything that we thought into a practical prototype, even though often it would do the exact opposite of what it is supposed to do. But at least physically, you could build things. So that is one issue, right? There was no great ecosystem to be able to build these things. Now there are a lot of rapid prototyping labs and stuff like that, but none of that really existed back then. Secondly, when you are doing a hardware startup, particularly when we started, it was very challenging because we were probably the only guys in a entrepreneurial event who would be doing hardware, and everyone else was essentially building a software solution. So people didn't really understand hardware technology space, and therefore investments were.
He mentioned it in past tense, saying that there when he started off, there was a problem with the hardware things. I don't think that's true. I think that problem is still there. The biggest challenge for us as companies is that there's absolutely no supply chain in the country as far as hardware is concerned, right? For example, if you want to take our anti-drone systems, there are a number of components to the anti-drone systems, such as the antennas that we need to procure. We need to procure a signal selector. We need to procure a power amplifier. While the overall architecture has been built by us, all the components are designed by us. There is nobody who manufactures this in the country because there is not enough of a demand in India first, and then outside India for Indian hardware components, because we are not in the field at all. So now, fortunately or unfortunately, whether you build the technology in India or not, you are dependent for high quality products from imported countries only. And if you look at that, if you take countries like Israel, Germany, who are good at this kind of technologies, they can provide these hardware to you. They'll be 8-10x the cost of what China or Taiwan can do. So then you're caught with the biggest quandary. Do you put Chinese components into defense technologies or not? Or will someone pay 10x of the same value to you when you're trying to sell it? And when the government wants to do L1 on everything, right, it becomes a massive headache for you, right? Sourcing of these components, import is fantastic because the customs have absolutely zero idea on these kind of components, and everything sounds like a bomb to them, right? They're like, jammer, power amplifier. Hurry, for everything there is one shock. And that provides a challenge in itself. I mean, I would love to hear what Srinath has to say, because I'm assuming that what he is doing is a far more complicated thing than what we are talking about.
Srinath, would you like to carry the thought forward?
Yeah, I think definitely building hardware continues to be hard. I don't know, at least when we started and even now, just because of the rigor it takes, right? And particularly being in aerospace, the extent of dependency on documentation and focusing on things which are harder to actually do but easy to say continues to exist. But that said, I think that's where things like partnering with academic institutions, partnering with people who've already done it, actually reduces the burden of it. But that said, it's a completely different game. You just need to be. I think when I started along with my other co-founder, we were not really prepared for what kind of rigor is going to be expected. But that was a shock. But now that we're used to it, I could at least tell that building hardware means building more discipline than what one would usually associate with a startup, and that is not easy. So that's just something I wanted to.
So on this topic, I just have actually one follow-up question, and then we'll move on to more positive, because this is a difficult topic of discussion. So if there's one thing you would, three of you, and anyone can take it first, would you like government to change? Like one thing that would actually change, make it easy for hardware startups to take off, what would that be? Like, what would be your request? And it can be, funding or whatever, you think is on top of your head. Is that one thing that can fix these issues?
Hi. Yeah, probably I'll go first. Yeah, because we work with the government. Also, because I think after this, I might have to drop off. Sorry about that. I have a government meeting actually. But anyway, the point is, I think two things, right? I think what the government has already done with things like the Startup India scheme and so on is to at least start encouraging startups like this. Definitely, right? What I think would more directly help is to probably build more common facilities at universities and stuff, wherein say, like, for example, basic workshops, or hardware mechanical workshops, or like electrical labs, electronic labs are actually available for more startups if they actually are at least approved by the local university. So at that level, because you can't go and address every startup, but at least at the university level, if that can be addressed, I think that will really, really help. I think it's happening, but not probably to the best level we can. And the other thing is probably having more formal bodies too, because all of this, the government is already doing it at very large scales through bigger companies. So there can be formal mentors actually announced for hardware deep tech startups, wherein they can come to, at least approach them. And there is going to be very little reinvention of the wheel, because I think that's actually a lot of waste of time. Everyone goes through the drill, and eventually after 2 years, people get it. But that 2 years can be shortened to probably 2 months if you have the right kind of people to start you off. So probably those two things could help in my view.
Yeah, certainly. We also look for help like that. Shiva and Ankit, would you like to share your thoughts? What would you like for Christmas, let's say, this year?
So I think, particularly in India, if we were to look at what are the challenges, right? There are a lot of issues around the procurement process, and Dr. Shiva also mentioned it. And I think it's more because it is the same procurement process for ration and the same procurement process for high tech. So somewhere I think we need to rationalize that, as well as the fact that startups and building deep tech out of India, one is expected to essentially make sure that you build something innovative, which essentially means that more than one person don't have it. But the requirement is that 3 people should have it. So it's kind of a big conundrum. So therefore, I think the process has to absorb that cost at the early stages, and say that for high technology areas, it need not follow the regular process that we are used to, and therefore we can accelerate the journey for a lot of these entrepreneurs. The problem is that we end up we don't get money when we are building for defense or other government use cases, and because it's a monopsony, if the government itself is not willing to buy and delays the purchase process by a big margin, and we have to wait for 3 more people to make what you are making, then you are already too late, right, in the cycle. So I think we've had this issue for years now, where being ahead of the curve is actually actually bad for you in that one sense.
Dr. Shiva?
Yeah, I think Ankit summed it up. I think if you ask me as to what is the one thing that I would ask the government, I would tell them that, forget everything else. Just give us a solid volume procurement, right? The problem is that, let's say, for example, we invest a significant amount of time and effort and money into it. Like, I know that Ankit has done a great job with the Switch UAVs, and they'll give you a 10 UAV order. That order is not enough to create a supply chain for it, which means I will continue buying most of the parts from whoever manufacturers around the globe, right? Like, if you want me to create an indigenous supply chain, you want me to create talent in India, I need to be able to produce hundreds of these systems that are then absorbed. The second thing that is also equally important, like, this is the one thing that will solve all the problems. You procure in sufficient numbers from the Indian startups, then the startups will thrive and the technology will improve. If you're not able to do that, then, like Ankit correctly said, you need to provide the necessary support in the starting stages, right? Like, people, especially since we work with IDEX, the government the defense ministry directly, there is always a requirement for a mil-spec, all certification cleared product to be ready in a year. And I'm like, dude, that's an unreasonable expectation, right? Like, creating a new product itself takes time. Now you want to create a solution, you want to take it into a product, you want to do all the mil-spec certifications in a year. It's unrealistic. Second thing is, and after the end of it, there is no guarantee or a surety of procurement. What I keep repeatedly telling the defense ministry is, today you want to buy the F-22 Raptor, you want to buy the F-35 Lightning. But please understand that the US Army, the US Air Force has funded F-1, which was a plane that failed. Then they funded the F-2, which failed again. Then the F-4, which failed again before the F-10 was procured. And at every stage, the US Air Force continued funding Lockheed Martin. That is why the company is where it is today. So if you want an Indian Lockheed Martin to build you F-35 on day one, without any errors, with everything done on 12-month timeline, it's not going to be possible, right? And if you give them impossible targets, you are going to run the company to the ground today or tomorrow. So that vision is something that I would really request the stakeholders and the government to think about. Understand how the US has done. You want to replicate what the success in US of Germany have done, but you need to find ways to do what they have done over 35 years in a 5-year time frame.
But I think, Dr. Shiva, there's some understanding is now, Ankit will also agree, and in last couple of years, we have also seen that there is a change in the way government is thinking, and then we are really seeing a shift in, I mean, at least not entire government body, but some of them have started to understand. And because of that, IDEX and Startup India kind of programs are coming. So I have a connected question to both of you, Shiva and Ankit. So you both are working with defense, and how hard or easy it is to actually work with defense, get an order and deliver it. What are the challenges that you have seen in last interactions with the defense procurement process?
I'll go first on this, especially since you mentioned IDEX. So see, when I'm telling you about the problems that we are facing and what they can do, that is not to completely undermine the system or to tell you that there is nothing that's happened in the last few years, right? I mean, the reason why we are a defense startup and we have done whatever we have done in the last 2-3 years is because there is a significant amount of improvement that is there in the system. What I'm trying to communicate is the fact that despite this, there is still a lot more to be done. And there are still unreasonable expectations for the improvements that have happened till today. Like, for example, IDEX is a fantastic platform. It is one of those few things that, the problem statements are put out there. The funding, whatever little bit that they do provide, is provided as a part of it. And there is a lot of interfacing with the government. And that, I think, is the fantastic part of IDEX. I was just on a panel a few weeks ago, and I was saying that if you ask me to summarize what IDEX has done fantastically in, let's say, a single sentence, is my meeting with the MD of Kalyani Rafael, where I told the gentleman how we have built this situational awareness on top of a BMP-2. And he said, Shiva, I'm surprised you guys are able to do this in 2 years' time. Because when we were building replacement guns for the BMP, the BMP has a gun that was under the indigenization program. And to build a gun that fits with our BMP tank, the guys who make the gun need a vehicle to experiment with. It took Kalyani, which is a multinational company, a huge company in the country, 7 years to get a chassis of the gun chassis of the vehicle from the Indian Army, right? So if you see what IDEX has done, is IDEX has given us 3 vehicles to work with in a period of around 9 months, compared to what it took Kalyani 7 years to get even a vehicle to experiment upon, right? So I think that's fantastic. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I think even companies like us, IdeaForge, etc., existing. But the vision that India has, the amount of defense deficit that India has, I think we are still throwing a few stones in the pond of water. There still needs to be rapid development and rapid progress for us to be able to catch up at any level of scale.
So I think just to carry this, I understand because, in this we are all new, and government is also starting, so challenges are on both sides. And I do also personally think that the pace has to be faster, being it IDEX, startup, whatever it is. All the policies are pace is very slow. Ankit, so now that the regulations have opened up for drones, where do you see drones like overall in India doing? How is this industry going to grow? And how optimistic you feel that we're going to be leading in this sphere?
Sarita, I think technologically we don't have any doubts that it's not that challenging. If you be with a tech for a long time, you build your strengths. In fact, one of the testaments was the win that we had end of last year against global competitors, and therefore I do not doubt our ability to compete and build the best systems in the world, particularly because we are building them for our country and we are building them for our environment and the kind of scenarios that we face on ground, rather than building them for certain other areas which are very different geographies and constraints. Having said that, as far as the growth of this industry is concerned, defense and particularly the emergency powers, we all know, have really given a huge shot in the arm for the entire industry, and we have large contracts going off to several companies in the drone and the counter drone space as well. So that's very exciting. On the other hand, if you look at the new rules really unlock the ability to operate drones in large parts of the country. And that is something which is, again, of very important thing to note, that you can actually legally go and make sure that you are able to operate your systems without too much fear, which implies that corporates, individuals, small service providers, they can go and operate their systems in large parts of the country with relative ease, which used to be completely locked out earlier. And with that, I'm expecting that a large number of applications, a large different kinds of use cases, such as spraying, agri mapping, delivery of medicines, a lot of these use cases might become the norm in the country over the next few months and years. But having said that, drones are already adding a lot of value, which has fueled people's desire to actually deploy them in larger numbers. If you look at what happened during the pandemic, for local law enforcement, drones were perhaps the tool that could actually get them to see inside the containment zones in terms of whether there is any enforcement at all or not, or are they being effective in creating a containment zone or not, right? So they become a must-have tool for them from a good-to-have technology. Drones over the last year or so have become must-have, and there are large procurements planned pretty much everywhere in that direction, as well as the Swamitva scheme that I was mentioning earlier, where the country plans to map all the 660,000 villages in our country and provide property cards to almost 100 million village population and bringing them into the mainstream. It's absolutely a phenomenal effort that is going on in the country. So drones are going to climb the ranks in terms of operationalization in a very massive pace. And that also implies that we will have to look at a lot more counter drone technologies as well for our critical infrastructure, to make sure that we are both utilizing the technology in the best possible manner, but at the same time protecting critical infrastructure from misdeeds that can really never be governed by any policy. They have to be governed by enforcement.
So early on in our discussion, we touched upon that hardware requires a lot more funds, and other than policy relaxation and procurement process. So in your experience, Dr. Shiva and Ankit, both, the question goes to both of you. How easy, or I would rather say how hard it is to raise funds for hardware-based startup?
Yeah, it remains hard in general. One of the challenges that I wanted to highlight for working with the defense is that, or in general with the government, is that investors don't easily trust a government-backed business, and therefore, and that's because the impression that government has created for itself, right? We don't find too many challenges. We've relatively had a reasonable run, in my opinion, as far as a lot of these concerns that people have with respect to payments and with respect to procurement processes and the long gestation periods. While the gestation periods remain long for regular processes, there are such events like what happened with China last year, which really spur growth in a very fast-paced manner. However, in general, the sensitivity towards the government business remains a little high, and overall, we also need to educate investors that it's okay. it is manageable, and things are much better than it used to be. So that is one aspect which is challenging. But broadly, apart from that, I think it's relatively easier now as compared to what it used to be. It used to be non-existent earlier, and now there is something happening at least.
Dr. Shiva, would you like to add something to that?
Sure. I mean, I think there is a definite improvement in terms of interest. Like, at least now we have some investors chasing around, looking for an exposure to the Indian dev tech startups. That was not the case, let's say, even 3-4 years back. So the first time we raised money, we raised it through what we call a convertible note backed by one of the hedge funds that we also run. It's a category 3 AIF, manages around 600 crores in the country. So the proposal that we had given our first set of investors was basically something like saying that, why don't you give us the money? We won't use your capital. We'll park it in a hedge fund that returns, let's say 24-30% a year. And let us use 50-60% of the interest that's coming out. So let's say someone gives you 10 crore rupees, you end up with 10 lakhs a month for your working capital requirements. And at the end of 3 years, if I have a product, you convert it into equity. If not, you walk back with, 7% interest. And that's how we managed to raise our first set of funds. It's what we call a convertible note, a de-risked option for investors. So when we pitched it, when we got our first round, we used to go around telling, do you want to invest in an Indian defense startup with a risk profile of Reliance and rewards of, let's say, SpaceX or something? That's basically what was the pitch was. Managed to raise it. It was a great story at that point of time. A lot of people came in because we managed to de-risk the investment portfolio itself. But it's not an easy thing to do, right? I mean, because like Ankit was saying, it's the procurement timelines are absolutely in nobody's control. And so then revenue recognition cycles are in nobody's control. Profit margins are under nobody's control. I mean, unless a guy is very passionate, they will not touch a defense company to invest in. Especially when there are a lot of good other options around. You jump into an e-commerce or a fintech company, about where the valuation is going to go. That growth is measured, it can be trackable. You can look at quarter upon quarter, if not revenue and profit, at least the number of subscribers, eyeballs, a number of other metrics that we can track, and those are going to go up. Right? In defense, you can't. I mean, we have a tracker that says, our product is building, 50% done, 52% done. But it takes a lot of investor education, as Ankit was saying earlier. You need to teach them what the industry is, what to look forward to. You need to convince them that there is a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and then hope for the best.
So I think we are short on time. So I have just 2 questions left, and I think we have missed Srinath. He's probably the internet issue. So we are already, people who are in hardware sphere are creating an ecosystem for the next generation of hardware. But when you talk of skill set, I mean, we have been at IIT Delhi and we have kind of struggled and figured it out how to work it around it. Is it easy to get skill set that is required to build the technology that you're building, both of you? Do you get? And I would really want you to say it, because people think being at IIT, you get the best hardware engineers. But I think that's a miss.
No, I think it's not easy to get the necessary talent for something like this. In general, you have to build the talent. You have to take what you get, the best you can get, and then build it inside. That's typically what happens. It's just hard to get. So first of all, the areas are new, so not too many people have traditional experience in what we're doing. On top of that, not a lot of hardware has been done. And even if it has been done, it has been done in organizations where you get to do only a very small part of a large product. So it's kind of hard and challenging to find talent which is directly plug and play. You have to really train it over a period of time, and it works out, but it takes much longer than usual.
Yeah. Dr. Shiva,
once you, just to add to what you're saying, once you train them, they are very, very valuable, and they are also very attractive to other companies.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree. It's so true.
that is very true. I think this is last question because as we all have felt that there is a lack of supply chain for hardware components. So do you think there is a scope for a startup in that area? So do you think
So Zetwork is
that gap?
Zetwork is just doing that. Zetwork is just doing that right now.
Oh,
Zetwork
wow.
is a unicorn that's just doing that. So in 3 years, they've actually built something like this. So yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, you have a unicorn in this space now. So, I rest my case. There is a need.
Very interesting, very interesting. I think now it's time to conclude our session, and we missed Srinath. Probably we'll take a question to him personally. And thank you everyone for being online and sharing our views. And it was very nice opportunity for all of us to share our experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Sarita.
Great
Wonderful
pleasure.
meeting you, Ankit.
Pleasure meeting you, Dr. Shiva.